governmental overreach was a huge issue in the past. Like they all wanted like small government. But now we have the government in our exam rooms. We have the government in our libraries telling us what books we can put out there. We have the government telling us in our school, in our classrooms, what they can teach, what can be taught. We have the government telling us, no, you can no longer have a Black student association or a women's student association. So that, I think, is where we're having a huge disconnect, because they were the party of protecting the Constitution and all of our constitutional rights. And now all of a sudden, they're controlling what we can do.
Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now to have with us a future Alabama Supreme Court Justice, AshLeigh Dunham. AshLeigh, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How about y'all?
Great. It's trying times sometimes. We were off last week, and so now we're kind of getting back into the swing of things. And whenever you do that, there's some things that you gotta work out for just a second. But otherwise, we're good. We're rolling along. We're rolling along.
Man,
I'm not naming any names.
That's behind the scenes stuff, man. Come on.
Right. Well, I was just saying. AshLeigh, running for the Supreme Court in the state of Alabama. You're going to be a great big lib on the Supreme Court and come in and probably restore abortion and do all sorts of crazy things, or just be a voice of reason, and make it to where corporations can't just openly do stuff. Tell me, what's the platform? What's your platform? What's the pitch to people? What do you tell people when you're out trying to lure the voters?
I mean, to be honest, yes, you're right. One blue dot on the Supreme Court. For me, I just tell everybody I want to add balance to the scales of justice. I want to stop the echo chamber that's going on and stop this rubber stamping of political agendas and bring us back to weighing human empathy and the law. Stop ignoring that there are actual impacts to people on an everyday basis. So that's kind of, just an overview of what I try to explain to people. But mainly what I'm trying to do is make sure that our constitutional rights are protected. Make sure that we stop what's happening right now, where we're slowly eroding all of our rights. Because Alabama, we set the precedent for the civil rights. We set the precedent for what's going to happen in the rest of the nation. And if we're not careful, then whatever happens here is going to trickle everywhere else.
Yeah, that's certainly true. We certainly set the precedent. Well, a lot of times we also set it the other way. There are a lot of things I want to kind of get to in terms of the civil rights discussion. But first, I wanted to just talk about you. What is your background? Where do you come from? What are you doing? Who are you?
Well, I am originally I actually lived in North Huntsville when I grew up. I went to Ed White Middle School, and then my mom and dad decided, well, we're going to go, your high school's not looking too great at this point in time. And we need to look at a different school because back then I think Butler was my high school, and I don't even know if Butler still exists. I know Ed White doesn't. So I went to Bob Jones. Yeah. I don't think it. Yeah. So we went to Bob Jones, and huge difference. Just in, honestly, the student population. So I went from being the minority in a school to being the majority of a school. And to this day, that was my upbringing. And I don't feel comfortable, honestly, most of the time, walking up to large groups of white people, because that was not my path. That was not me. And so I feel like that really, for me, kind of, it changed my entire trajectory of my life. Because when I was in high school, my friends were the most diverse group of people at Bob Jones, which is crazy because it was 99% white. But I mean, I remember I had friends of every color, of every background, of every, like, it was just nice. And then when I went to Alabama, it was right before Obama got elected. And so, yeah, I dealt with like the Bush situation, but it was a time of change. And when I was in law school, that was during Obama, so it was a very, like, my entire life has been kind of this trajectory of getting to where I am right now. And I went to Cumberland. And then after that, I opened my own law practice, came back to Huntsville for 2 years, practiced in Huntsville for 2 years as a divorce attorney. And then I was a litigator for over 15 years. And then I took the bench a few years ago and started hearing child abuse and neglect cases. And before that, I sat as a special sitting circuit judge hearing abuse cases in general. So protection from abuse cases, divorce cases, and termination of parental rights, which are what people call like the death penalty of parents' rights.
So, AshLeigh, I've got a few questions for you just listening to you, and also having heard you speak very recently at the local liberal brigade here in Huntsville, which is a gathering of like-minded liberals and progressives, mostly Democrats, I guess. When you talk about rubber stamping, the court sort of rubber stamping a political agenda, can you give us some examples of that? And I know you have to be careful as a judicial candidate when it comes to dealing with cases that could, you don't want to comment on cases or things that could ultimately maybe perhaps come before the court. But you said something very specific there. Can you give us examples of that?
I can give you my number one example, which is why I decided to run. So the IVF decision, when that came through, when you read the opinion, you can tell while you're going through it that they were trying to get a specific political ideology passed forward, which was that life begins at conception. And at that point in time, we're going to give rights to embryos. So we're going to say that at this point in time, life has begun, and that embryo has the exact same rights as you and me. So what they did there was basically make it so that any type of reproductive health care law that is passed is going to start at conception, as opposed to heartbeat, as opposed to viability. And the thing is, that has been an agenda that has been pushed across the entire United States. And there are several places who have tried to do it, and they just couldn't get there. Just like Texas tried to right after we had that happen. And the Texas Supreme Court, after seeing what happened with Alabama, said, no, we're not going to do that. And the way that I know that was so purposely done, besides it being obvious to like legal scholars seeing that, but immediately after it, the man who wrote the opinion, he then came out and Jay Mitchell, then said in his resignation letter, I got us to life beginning at conception, to embryo personhood. I got us there. And I feel like the Supreme Court is holding me back from being able to move forward this agenda or move forward my ideologies to stop the woke agenda. It's in his resignation letter, which he released to everyone. So that right there is, I think, one of the biggest ways that they have done that recently.
Okay. If you were elected to the Supreme Court, and of course we're hoping that you're successful, but if you were elected to the Supreme Court, you, as you've already indicated, you'd be a blue dot in a red sea. What kind of impact do you really expect you can have in terms of trying to shift the judicial worldview of the current court?
Well, to be honest with you, RBG, right? So she's famous for her dissents. So if you have an echo chamber, you're only going to hear one thing that's going around. So one viewpoint. And when I was going through and when I read the opinions that they issue these days, I see that there are people on that Supreme Court who are able to be moved. And I even heard them speaking. During the state bar conference, one of the guys got up there and he said, when Chief Justice Sarah Stewart was talking about access to courts and these accountability courts, I kept thinking these accountability courts that she's trying to get to come down to all of our different counties. Well, those are just bleeding heart liberal courts. And then he stopped for a second and he said, except they work. These accountability courts help bring families back together. They help get people off of drugs. So these bleeding heart liberal courts are actually working. So you see, like, you're slowly getting them to come to a place of, well, I guess this does actually make sense. And I'll be honest with you, my law partner of over 11 years, she was as right as you could get. She was a very strong Republican, and she was one of my best friends for the longest time period. And she now lives in DC, which is pretty funny. But she and we would talk about every case, and we would always bring ourselves to a more moderate position on almost every single case because we had differing views. So while, yes, I would be, just a blue dot, I can at least bring everybody to a little bit more of a center position, as long as we don't have people like Tom Parker, who's now gone, or Justice Mitchell, who's now gone. You get the far, far right out, you can get everybody back to good.
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Parker. He definitely was just notoriously an ideologue, a right-wing ideologue. I mean, just extreme.
The
And
Colonel?
I'm
You mean the
definitely
Colonel, Tom
glad he's
Parker?
not on the court anymore. Say that again, Josh?
The Confederate Colonel, Tom Parker?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I've got one other question for you, AshLeigh. You have talked about your extensive experience as an attorney. Correct me if I'm wrong, but have you had any experience judicially and at the circuit level or anything like that?
So, yeah, I sat as a special sitting circuit judge, which is basically somebody who is volunteering their time, hearing cases, appointed as a judge, but you don't get paid for it. So I was literally serving my community. So I've sat as a special sitting circuit judge numerous times. One time when one of our judges passed away for about 3 months or 4 months, I handled her docket alone, and that was just the termination docket. Then I sat as a special sitting circuit judge hearing divorce cases and protection from abuse cases. And then I sat as a referee for the last 2-3 years now. It's 2 years now, where I heard the child abuse and neglect cases. So a referee is it's like a judge, but you get paid half the amount. So you have somebody who sits over you as your presiding judge, just as you would if you were a judge and you had another presiding judge sitting over you telling you, okay, these are the things that you need to do. These are the rules you need to follow. So my presiding judge was Judge Pringle in Bessemer, the Bessemer division of Jefferson County, and then Judge Hunter after that. So I was hearing cases like dependency, where there was child abuse and neglect, delinquency, where children had been arrested, and then also like truancy, where students weren't going to school and you had to have the parents come in front.
All right. I wanted to ask, kind of circle back to the civil rights issue, because we see a lot of this now, and I mean, civil rights has been an issue forever, obviously, but with everything kind of going on in Minnesota, and around the country with the protests and what's legal and what's not legal, there was a bill that's on the floor now, I believe, the floor of the House, or will be soon, that would allow, or this state would ban people from wearing masks while at protests. Obviously that's something that's going to wind up in front of the Alabama Supreme Court. I mean, we're going to go to court over this. There's going to be a fight, and it's going to end up there. What is your kind of take on that, and then also kind of juxtapose that with the wearing of masks by law enforcement officers, ICE, in Minnesota and around the country?
So, I've looked a lot into this because I was thinking to myself, masks, we go back to COVID. So we start worrying about people who have medical issues and people who need those because of medical diagnoses. And that Of course, it's like the first thing that causes me concern, because then you're going after specific types of people and people who have, ADA issues. So we're looking at disability issues here. But the number one thing is masks protect your identity. So it goes back. Have you ever heard of the case, the NAACP? It's like I think it was versus Alabama, maybe. They talk about the list of people who are involved with the NAACP, and they said in this case, you don't have to release the information from the people who were involved in whatever protest, because you're allowed to protest in such a manner that you can protect your identity. You're allowed to dress up like male genitalia. You're allowed to dress up in some sort of way so that you don't have to face repercussions of getting fired. You don't have to face repercussions of getting arrested at a later date. You don't have to worry about your reputation being out there, people doxing you. So that's why they're allowing ICE to wear masks. That's why so they can protect their identities. But if you do that for free speech, or, if you're doing that and you're infringing on free speech, that's a huge issue, because you have that. I mean, we have the case that's there. The NAACP did not have to give out their lists, because you have to be able to freely protest and freely assemble. And if you start infringing on that, then you have issues with infringing on free speech.
Yeah, we seem to be moving in the Republican Party, or in this state. They seem to be moving way away from this idea of personal responsibilities and personal freedoms, in which they are now wanting to dictate pretty much every portion of everyone's life. And that is particularly true for anything that they don't like, and that goes all the way to books. Is there anything that the Supreme Court could do to stop this ridiculous nonsense of keeping of trying to prevent certain books from being in libraries, or being, or wherever they're going to put them in libraries, and withholding funding from libraries for the positioning of materials in the library? Is there anything that could be done there?
Well, that again, it goes back to free speech and looking. I mean, there's a case from 1982. It was like National Trees or something versus Pico, and it talks about you cannot use your ideology to limit people's ability to have access to information in other areas. So you cannot use that to ban books. You cannot use that to tell people what they can expose their children to. And so I think, and then let's just go to the most recent SCOTUS case that came forward, which was in Texas, where Texas was banning books left and right. And it went to the Supreme Court, and they're like, well, we're not going to do anything about it. And they essentially allowed the book bans. And the reason why they said that, because they were like, well, we're looking at parent choice too. So what you're talking about with the Republicans saying, okay, well, we're going to overstep. Yes, overstepping when they want to, which is funny, because what you have to think about is like governmental overreach was a huge issue in the past. Like they all wanted like small government. But now we have the government in our exam rooms. We have the government in our libraries telling us what books we can put out there. We have the government telling us in our school, in our classrooms, what they can teach, what can be taught. We have the government telling us, no, you can no longer have a Black student association or a women's student association. So that, I think, is where we're having a huge disconnect, because they were the party of protecting the Constitution and all of our constitutional rights. And now all of a sudden, they're controlling what we can do. I don't want someone telling me what books my daughter can be exposed to. Mm-hmm. I don't want someone telling me what medical procedures my daughter can get. I don't want someone telling me what religion my daughter has to practice. So, yes, our Supreme Court, and honestly, SCOTUS needs to step up and do something like they did in 1982 and say, stop using your narrow ideology to tell me what I can expose my child to. Stop using your ideology to allow me to get the medical treatments my child needs. And I think that that's where we have to get to is to say, what happened in Fair Hope? Just because the library board of the entire state didn't say, take those books off the shelves. Instead, they just took money away. That's the same as burning those books. It's the exact same thing. So I think that if our state would step up and say, well, we have access, we need to have this access to information. We need to have the children able to read whatever books they need, they feel like they need to read. That's when I think that we're protecting constitutional rights. We're shielding the vulnerable. I mean, the people who go to libraries are going to be children and the people who can't afford to buy the books. Those are the vulnerable, and those are the ones that our courts are here to protect.
Yeah, the library thing has always been ridiculous to me. I mean, you've got a building full of books. You go into the building full of books and you pick out the book that you want. I mean, that honestly, the library's responsibility to me is to put the books in the building, and then it's your responsibility as either a parent or a consumer to go in and pick out the books that you want or that you don't want your children to read. And the idea that we're now going to be, well, I think they used to call it the nanny state. Fox News was pretty famous for calling it the nanny state, and so now we're literally the nannies at this point. We're literally in the library with them, telling them which books they can read and can't read, and it's just really absurd. But AshLeigh, listen, we really appreciate you coming on and spending some time, and we're going to try to get folks out to vote for you, because I believe that you're absolutely right that even a lone voice on that court would be better than no voice at all, and it would kind of disrupt the echo chamber to a certain extent. And at the very least, when all those opinions come out, there would be one dissent down there that somebody could read and say, hey, at least somebody's got some decent common damn sense about some of this stuff. So thank you. Thank you for running. Thank you for giving it a shot. And thank you for spending some time with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me.
Absolutely. That is AshLeigh Dunham. Y'all go vote for
Absolutely.
her, and she can't ask for money, so y'all give her some. It's really, it's ridiculous. I mean, for us to act like that this is not happening, but really donate to the campaign and help her out and go vote for her, and let's make this place a little bit better. All right, we're going to slide out. We're going to come back in just a few minutes. Alabama Politics This Week. We're back in a minute.